To the horror of Cleopatra, who later commits suicide, Alexander's mother Olympias orders the execution of Philip's newborn son, leaving himself as the only possible heir to the Macedonian throne. King Alexander then turns his attention toward what would become his life's goal, the conquest of Persia. But first, in the tradition of his father, Alexander decides to seek counsel from the oracle at Delphi to determine if he is indeed destined by the gods to defeat Darius and rule all of Asia. Unlike Philip, however, who always sent an emissary, Alexander goes himself in November of 335 BC.
When Alexander arrives here at Delphi, he is told that he has come at the wrong time of year. The oracle cannot be consulted during the winter months. He must return in the spring. Alexander, not being one to take no for an answer, goes to the priestess and tries to drag her by force here to the temple. At last, overcome by his persistence, she cries out, "You are invincible, my son." When he hears this, Alexander declares that he needs no other prophecy. He has obtained the answer he was seeking.
As with many stories describing Alexander, it is difficult to separate myth from reality in the accounts of his visit to Delphi. But Alexander's passionate desire to please the gods and seek their guidance is a recurring theme in his life. As he is about to embark on what will be a 12-year journey, Alexander may or may not have a notion that he himself has some form of deified lineage. When he leaves for Asia, his mother Olympias tells him that upon his return, she will reveal an incredible secret about his life. Many believe Olympias will address the haunting question that only she can answer. Is Alexander the son of a god, or is he a mere mortal man? The year is 334 BC. King Philip II of Macedon is dead, assassinated by his own bodyguard. Conspiracy theories suggest that his wife Olympias and son Alexander may have been involved, but no one can say for certain. Alexander, at age 20, becomes king and wastes no time asserting his authority. He chooses to continue a massive offensive his father had begun, the conquest of Asia, and the defeat of the most powerful ruler on earth, Persian king Darius.
He really had no choice but either to withdraw that force or reinforce it and have a full-scale war of annexation, which was of course the alternative that he chose. I don't think he ever thought of anything else, and I don't think even from the beginning that there was any limit on his ambition of conquest.
Alexander's invasion starts with a daunting logistical maneuver, transporting his army of 40,000 across the body of water separating Europe and Asia, the Hellespont. Today, the Hellespont is known as the Dardanelles. Ferry boats travel back and forth across the strait. Here, Alexander's troops cross into Asia, transported on an assortment of man-powered rowing vessels. Moving such a massive force is fraught with peril due to the possibility of foul weather and the fact that the navy of Persian King Darius is 3 times as large.
This is the Asian shore of the Hellespont. The current here is strong and the winds can be brutal. Alexander's ships could be very vulnerable to naval attack as they ferry the army across. But Alexander has 2 strokes of luck. The weather is fine and the huge Persian fleet is far away, quelling a revolt in Egypt. Alexander doesn't hesitate. He's been dreaming of this moment, leading his troops into Asia to begin the conquest of the Persian Empire. He sets sail, halfway across, sacrificing a bull to the sea god Poseidon. He's first to set foot on the Asian shore, hurling a spear into the sand, claiming to receive Asia from the gods. He's not aware that nearby the forces of Darius are gathering, determined that this should be Alexander's first and last trial of strength.
Persian King Darius considers young Alexander an upstart, to be quickly vanquished. The Persian ruler chooses not to waste his time commanding the troops himself. Instead, he sends his most trusted general Memnon, a Greek mercenary, who chooses a battleground where the terrain will work in his favor, the Granicus River. This is the Granicus today. In Alexander's time, it is 3 times as wide and deep. Alexander is accompanied by his own trusted advisors, military commander Parmenio, his close friend Hephaestion, and Callisthenes, a nephew of Aristotle, who serves as Alexander's personal historian. On the high opposite bank of the Granicus River, the Persian army waits, with 20,000 cavalry and 20,000 infantry, many of them Greek mercenaries. Greek author and General Arrian wrote about Alexander's first test of will.
Parmenio came to Alexander and argued, "We cannot take the army across the river on a broad front. A failure in our first action will at once have serious consequences and will put at risk the result of the whole war." Alexander replied, "I know that, Parmenio. But I would be ashamed if I could cross the Hellespont easily and then found that this little stream could prevent us from crossing. It does not fit in with the way I react when I meet danger."
Alexander proceeds to organize his army for a bold attack, one that many military leaders might consider foolhardy. Alexander plays a key role in the offensive, brazenly wearing a white-plumed helmet, marking him as the prime target of every enemy soldier. Alexander's battle strategy at the river Granicus utilizes tactics he learned from his father. Thousands of highly trained soldiers on foot and horseback would boldly cross the river and meet the Persians head-on. Alexander would cross the river upstream, leading his companion cavalry to attack the enemy from the right flank.
There was a profound hush as both armies stood for a while motionless on the brink of the river, as if in awe of what was to come. Then Alexander himself, at the head of the right wing of the army, with trumpets blaring and the shout going up to the god of battle, moved forward into the river.
It seemed the act of a desperate madman rather than a prudent command, to charge into a swiftly flowing river which swept men off their feet and surged about them, and then to advance through a hail of missiles toward the steep bank, which was strongly defended by infantry and cavalry. But in spite of this, Alexander pressed forward.
He was foolhardy, but there was a method in his madness. One of the things about leading from the front rather than the rear is that it really makes people follow you. You're not asking them to do anything that you're not doing yourself.
There are many historical accounts about what happened here at the Granicus. Suspiciously, none of them agree except that it was an extremely hard-fought battle. It may be that Alexander's first assault against the Persian bank was beaten back, and he was forced to change his tactics. In propaganda terms, this initial defeat would be disastrous, so perhaps it was hushed up. From a military point of view, it would seem suicidal to send men against determined opposition across this river and up that bank. But it seems that that is exactly what Alexander did, and it may be that the hard-fighting Macedonians, with the advantage of their long pikes, did manage to get a foothold up there.
When Alexander reaches the opposite riverbank, he leads a cavalry charge.
Alexander is struck on the helmet. He loses his spear and is handed another. He is in the act of killing one Persian noble when another one raises his sword to strike down at Alexander. Just in time, his arm is severed by a Macedonian sword stroke. The Persians, by pulling their forces away from the riverbank, have weakened their center, and now the Macedonians can cross the river in strength. Squeezed between the pikes of the phalanx and Alexander's cavalry, the Persians break and run.
Against all odds, Alexander defeats the Persian army at Granicus.
This was perhaps the greatest stroke that Alexander could have hoped for, because when the enemy withdrew from the field, he had achieved everything that he wanted to achieve, which was to say, basically, you've totally underestimated me, and I'm going to whip your butt.
Alexander's victory at Granicus allows his army to continue its invasion of Persia. General Memnon survives the battle and reports to Persian King Darius, who determines that the next time the two forces meet, he personally will command the Persian troops. (334 BC). Having defeated Persian forces at the Granicus River and gained control over key Aegean seaports, Alexander moves his army to the city of Gordium, which offers no resistance to the powerful Macedonian army. Since 1950, Gordium has been excavated by archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania. Walls of the city, remnants of houses, even the entrance through which Alexander once passed, have all been preserved.
In Alexander's time, this great walled citadel of Gordium is a vital link on the royal road that leads deep into the heart of the Persian Empire. When the all-conquering Alexander arrives at the gates, they are thrown open to him, and he decides to wait here for reinforcements. 400 years earlier, Gordium had been the city of King Midas. Now, Alexander had been educated in the gardens of Midas, so he must have known the local legend. Gordius, Midas's father, had also come here from Macedonia, but he had arrived in an ox cart. When Gordius became king, he dedicated the ox cart here in the shrine of Zeus. Now, the shaft of the cart was connected to the yoke by a great knot, the ends of which were invisible. It was said that whoever could untie this knot would be the ruler of Asia. This is a time in which people absolutely believe in gods, in legends, and in symbols, and this is a great symbol. Once Alexander has publicly accepted this challenge, he has to succeed. He looks at the knot, but like everyone else, he can't see how to untie it. Then, as usual, Alexander thinks out of the box. He says,